for the next time some idiot tries to tell you the GOP is the party of business, I believe it was on CNN. It was fairly early in the morning. It was one of the news talk shows, and I was channel surfing, and I just heard some Republicans say, well, the Republican Party is better with business. They are the party of business, words to that effect, right? And, I hear this every weekend. It's like if you watch the Sunday shows, the politics shows, almost every weekend you're going to hear some Republicans say, yeah, we're the party of business. We know what's going on. Well, no, the Republicans are not the party of small business or of business in general. I mean, maybe they were when Dwight Eisenhower was president, when I was a little kid in the 1950s. But it has not been that way since the Reagan Revolution at all. I mean, first of all, the core of American business before Reagan was small and medium-sized companies. Yeah, there were some large companies, but, they mostly just did like national production stuff, General Motors making cars. We enforced the antitrust laws so aggressively, and this was all to protect small, local, and medium-sized local and family-owned businesses. We protected those businesses so aggressively with the antitrust laws that in the 1960s, when Kinney and Buster Brown Shoes wanted to merge, a combined company that would control a little more than 5%, a little less, than 5% of the total shoe market, the Supreme Court shot it down. That was the policy of America. But, now you've got 20% of the shoe market controlled by just one company, Nike, for example. Small and medium-sized companies built America, but in 1983, when Reagan ordered the DOJ, the FTC, and the SEC to stop enforcing the antitrust laws, dating back to 1891, like the Sherman Act, these giant corporations began a relentless campaign to destroy locally owned businesses. Also, education supports business. In the 1950s, Dwight Eisenhower was building schools, tens of thousands of them all across America. From the earliest days of the Industrial Revolution, we were always very proud of the fact that America had one of the best educated workforces in the world. But in 2010, when a group of fossil fuel billionaires bankrolled the Tea Party and were looking for an issue to beat up Democrats with, they settled on Common Core. Common Core was a set of national standards for graduating from high school, basically, that were fairly high. But the Tea Party, well, actually it started with Fox News and right-wing hate radio. They started to say, oh, Common Core is indoctrination. It's the new communist indoctrination of our children. And it ran day after day after day on Fox News, just like the whole critical race theory thing. That's the 2020 version. This was the 2010 version 10 years ago, that state after state, Republican-controlled state after state, did away with Common Core. And now they're trying to do away with their public schools altogether. Arizona was the first state to offer vouchers to attend religious schools or all-white, so-called private academies to any student in the state. Now, Texas, Florida, Kansas, and a dozen other Republican-run states are planning on doing the same. Unions made America and made American business rich. Dwight Eisenhower ran for re-election on supporting unions. But Reagan went after them with PATCO. Dwight Eisenhower created the Small Business Administration, the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Nixon created the Environmental Protection Agency. These were Republicans before Reagan. Post-Reagan, they hate all these agencies. I mean, back in 2004, this is another thing. Republicans keep business costs absurdly high. Back in 2004, Toyota announced they'd be opening a new facility in North America. 3 southern U.S. states offered them billions in tax advantages. But they ended up going to Canada. Why? Because the costs of healthcare are half in Canada what they are here, and healthcare is one of the major parts of the expenses of having employees. But here's the real kicker, the punchline. In fact, I probably should have put this at the beginning of the article instead of toward the end. Between 1933 and 2020, there were 14 American presidents, 7 Democratic and 7 Republican. Under those 7 Republican presidents, the economy grew at only 2.4%. Under those 7 Democratic presidents, the economy grew at 4.6%. 10 of the past 11 recessions began under Republican presidents. And although it looks like lifelong Republican Jerome Powell is trying to impose one on President Biden. Republicans have exploded the national debt. The only balanced budgets in the last 60 years came out of the Carter, Clinton, and Obama administrations. Bill Clinton left George W. Bush a $128 billion surplus after 4 consecutive years of budget surpluses. Bush immediately squandered it with a massive tax cut for billionaires and 2 illegal wars. President Biden just last year decreased federal spending by $550 billion and reduced the deficit by $1.4 trillion, the largest one-year deficit drop in American history, all while creating 5 times more jobs in 2 years than the last 3 Republican presidents combined. If not for the Reagan, Bush, and Trump tax cuts for billionaires and 2 wars George W. Bush lied us into, our national debt today would be 0 instead of over $30 trillion. Yet these guys have the gall to demand that Biden cut veterans programs, food stamps, public schools, student loan debt relief, the IRS, the EPA, green energy programs, funding for rail inspections, and make Trump's tax cuts for himself and his billionaire buddies permanent in exchange for not intentionally crashing the economy. You know, the simple reality is that Republicans have nothing more than hate and fear to sell. This is it. They've got no plan for the economy. They haven't had a plan for the economy since the election of Ronald Reagan that goes beyond deregulation for giant polluting corporations and tax cuts for billionaires. That's it. That's all they've got. And these policies, you know, are terrible for America. So they're replacing them now, you know, or they're trying to downplay them by, shifting our emphasis, saying, hey, look over here. You know, while our left hand is giving billionaire tax cuts and letting coal companies dump more pollution into rivers to pollute downstream water supplies, with our right hand, we're doing something we think you'll like, at least you base Republican primary voters, trashing public schools, removing hundreds of books from schools and libraries, saturating our towns and cities with weapons of war, banning women's access to reproductive health care, packing our courts with judges who'd be comfortable with the American Nazi movement, the Federalist Society, and the John Birch Society. So the next time some idiot tries to tell you that the Republican Party is the party of business, let them know the real facts. The only businesses that Republicans actually support are gun sellers, mega churches, corrupt defense contractors, and giant monopolies. And none of those are good for average Americans or locally owned businesses or even the entire U.S. economy. The GOP is not the party of business. The Democratic Party is the party of business. We'll be right back.